he's going to talk about in a short while. But what is important is how did he emerge out of it and taking it to the next level. He's now gotten into educating, I would say the future generations. So students from schools, colleges, universities, gearing them up for this journey, for this battle. And that too very, very beautifully. So please join me in welcoming Karthik Bajoria. Hi, Karthik.
Hi, Aastha. That's one of the most beautiful introductions I've ever received. You focused on the right stuff, not on the big names, but on the journey. So thank you very much. At the very outset, I want to say two things quickly to you. First, that your show and what you're doing is wonderful. There are lots of naysayers and cynics who feel that ye happiness coach kya hai, wellness coach kya hai, life coach kya hai. And I can tell you in all humility, but not to sound patronizing, that is really the critical need of the hour, because we live in such unhappy times and society, and people are so woefully unhappy. So congratulations on that and on doing this particular series. And second thing I want to very quickly say is that you've had on infinitely more accomplished and inspiring people than I, so I feel very lucky to be here. So thank you.
It's my pleasure, Karthik. And I think we just got to speak. We've been connected for a while now, but we just spoke, I think, a few days back. And I don't know, somehow speaking to you, I instantly felt connected, and I felt that this has to happen. I personally wanted to hear it out because it is so inspiring. Every day, there are times I battle. I won't say bigger instances, but those small moments where I feel low, I don't know how to get out of it. I'm stuck. And somewhere then we kind of give up also. So sure. I think when you shared your personal things and crisis on a very broader level, I knew I had to at least hear this out. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining me. It's really a pleasure, I can tell you.
Entirely my pleasure. Yes.
Lovely. Great. So Karthik, to begin with, Dune School, Hindu College, I think a lot of youngsters aspire to be there. New York Film Academy, and then coming to, back to Jaipur, and then educating, teaching, getting into this transition. What led to this?
Okay, so without getting into very gory details, my brother and I, we were both sent off to Dune School. Not the first choice, especially at the time that I went. I'm prehistoric now, so I'm talking about 1991, 1990. So in that era, even the parents who consider sending their kids to boarding school, the obvious choice was Mayo, Ajmer being close proximity, or at the most Sindhya School, Gwalior. My parents had the foresight of visiting many schools across the length and breadth of the country, and for some reason, they decided that it was going to be Dune. So I've been the beneficiary of a lot of happy accidents in my life. Having said that, I must be completely honest and share that the reason we were sent to boarding school was because the home environment was not ideal. And I think it was a very wise decision on two people's part who weren't getting along. To at least ensure that the children escaped that kind of atmosphere all the time. So that's the sort of backdrop in which I went to Dune. And Dune was a very, very liberating experience, because in it, more than the...
So Karthik, I think there's some network issue. You froze for a while. Yeah, now you're back.
Okay. So Dune School was an eye-opening experience, not so much for the reasons that it's known for. Of course, there was a lot of camaraderie. There's a different vibe and a bond with kids that you live day in and day out with for 8 months of every given year. There's, of course, it's one of the best schools. There's a lot of exposure, extracurricular, etc., etc. But primarily in my case, I found in a few of my masters and teachers at that school, people who finally encouraged me to look within, to explore what I really was passionate about, expose me to those aspects of life, and then in a very non-preachy, unsaid way, instill in me the confidence of pursuing those passions I had discovered throughout my life. My own music head of department, for example, at the Dune School was somebody who was, I dare say, a musician despite his own family's wishes. They would have probably liked him to go in another direction, but he ran away. He done all kinds of things. He drove a taxi in Australia, but only because he was so desperately wanting to pursue his passion, and that's what he did. And he became a shagird of Ustad Abdul Halim Jafar Khan Sahab and learned the sitar. And so there was this bunch of 2-3 people who basically showed me that inner contentment and happiness could only come if you discovered and pursued what you really loved to do. It's as simple as that. That's the greatest lesson I learned at school. And years later, while I dabbled in many things that I enjoyed partially, there was this nagging feeling inside me that perhaps my reason to exist on this planet is something different. And then while my wife and I were in the media working in Bombay, by chance I got to go into a classroom to take some fill-in classes, and realized that was it. It was like that eureka moment that scientists have, where I felt perhaps that because I'm not a trained teacher, I don't come with a certain theoretical baggage and a sort of myopic sense of approaching this whole thing, not to belittle the effort that our teachers make at all. But I think there was a slight freshness to it that perhaps students connected with, and I found more and more that I was being able to influence them. And once we moved back to Jaipur, having had our fill of the glamorous media industry, teaching has happily become my major preoccupation.
Wow. So what started as just a fill-in class led to your discovery of your purpose or your passion, and then your
yes. And I want to very quickly add, Aastha, this happened.
Give me some more, like what are you doing when it comes to educating? Yeah, sorry, you were saying something, Karthik?
I'm sorry, I was just saying, I very quickly want to add that this realization itself came to me in my early to mid 30s. So what I also want to say is that that's perfectly fine. There's such tremendous pressure these days on students and kids to figure out exactly what life path they're going to take, from education to career to everything else. Really young kids are expected by their parents and society to know ki wo exactly is step ke baad kaun sa step lenge. And I keep telling them it's just fine. It's normal to be confused. It's wonderful to explore. In fact, confused people lead very interesting lives because we discovering more things and exploring more things. So I made this shift in my mid 30s and left what would have positively gone on to become a very, very successful career in the media, and decided to become a teacher, which pays little or nothing. But my God, the satisfaction that I get is simply incomparable.
I'm sure. And I see that, I sense that as you're talking, the fulfillment, the satisfaction that you draw out of what you're doing. So, Karthik, now that you are into teaching, into educating, what are you exactly doing? Like you did say that there's no theoretical baggage, which actually is brings a very different flavor. It all comes from your experience, your life experience, and the practical experience. But what do you really do, as in with the school students, college students?
Right. Yeah. So again, like I said earlier, there have been lots of happy accidents. So another happy accident has been that because of my academic and earlier professional background, which is English honors, filmmaking, advertising, and then a stint in the media, I was already writing since many years. And so there's a certain, I suppose, expertise in communication skills. The happy accident part of it is that I feel that communication skills, therefore, is a great way of connecting with students, teaching them that very, very valuable life skill of communicating effectively, whether it's writing or public speaking. But us bahane se, what I essentially try and do is really what my teachers, mentors like Mr. Sandeep Sethi in Jaipur and my teachers back at Dune did for me, is to liberate the student's mind, is to compel them to look inwards, to look outwards, to sort of get out of whatever preconceived shells or biases that they may unconsciously be inhabiting. Because children take it upon themselves कि अच्छा हमारे parents ऐसे हैं, हमारी family ऐसे है, ये हमारे से expected है. It doesn't even have to be that a parent sits a child down and says तुम्हें CA ही करना है. It doesn't have to happen that way. Children assume it in any case, right? So my idea is to cajole, nudge, and instigate each child in every class of mine to say, hey, what do I really, really love to do? And what do I have a natural flair or talent for? And then I promise my agenda is not to turn them into rebels, but it is certainly to turn them into individuals who have the courage of conviction to say that, hey, I am damn interested in photography. I'm reasonably good at it. Maybe I won't earn pots and pots of money in the initial 5 years. I won't get a starting mota corporate package that I would post my MBA, but I am still going to do this because at the end of the day, I'll have no regrets and I'll be happy.
So tell me, Karthik, is it not somewhere contradicting the whole, I won't say pedagogy, but yes, the whole structure on which the school education, the formative years, the way it's structured, we are the schools are so passionate about results. They're so result oriented, and I won't say they are kind of pressurizing, but somewhere the whole idea is to get into a nice career, high paying jobs, and that's what the parents also want somewhere. And then bringing on this, how does it fit into the whole system which is there?
That's an excellent question. It doesn't fit. But the thing here is that, I've thought about this objectively, neither are schools to blame, nor are parents to blame. This is something that has developed over generations of societal, sociological formation. It's happened as a result of a certain cycle that a country is in, where if you come from if you come from very humble and modest roots, then it is generally dictated again consciously or unconsciously that aspiration means you aspire to more wealth or more money. These are things that develop over generations. Patriarchy also has a role to play in it. Whether it's schools or parents, to me, is a very chicken and egg situation. But I can tell you that there are schools who might be, reluctantly or per force propagating 95%, etc. पर वो साथ दूसरी चीज भी कर रहे हैं.
Okay.
There are schools, there are educators, there are parents who realize the merit of true happiness and contentment, and not just blindly following the herd. To tell you something, to share something funny, because we were working in Bombay for so long, and there was such a huge corporate sector and culture there. We used to see these hordes and hordes of corporate executives, come out during lunchtime or hit the pubs after work. Couldn't tell them apart. And my wife and I used to call them clone wars, because they were all in their black pants and blue shirts. And I think it's such a huge irony, because that's symbolic of something that is against every fiber of our individual beings. We are all individual, unique peculiar, eccentric, special people. And there is society wants to shoehorn us, wants to put us in those lines that we follow for check-in at the airport in every walk of life. And this will happen. I promise you, slowly but surely, as society becomes wealthier and more confident, this need to push children into those four pre-approved jobs or areas of study and career, it will start to lessen. Why should I lie? I'm teaching, and it's very convenient for me to take this moral high ground. I'm teaching because I'm one of those deeply privileged people who doesn't have to depend only on this for my bread and butter. But because of that, I also believe that if people in relatively privileged positions don't take those risks, if families who are samarth and well-to-do don't allow their children to experiment and follow their passions, then who's going to do it? Certainly not a daily wage laborer's child.
True. Got it. So when you got into exploring and you just went with the flow, and maybe in your 30s you discovered that this is where your heart lies, which is teaching, and somehow if I have to draw a parallel, and if I say that is a great thing to do, I got this for myself, being an engineer MBA, I was into corporate for 9 years, and then I came to this coaching, which is my passion. Right. So I can so relate to what you're saying. But don't you think it is risky from the standards of, I would say, if we are to talk about everybody doing it, exploring, and, while I agree, we are all in our time zones and things happen the way they have to. But do you think, is that what you're saying then, that yes, that's the way to go about it? Because I don't think you will maybe at once, or the first thing that you pick up is going to be your passion, your purpose. It's only on exploring that you really get to it.
So
Aastha, is that what you're saying?
If I understand your question correctly, yes, it's extremely risky. It's both risky and very tough. Let me not mince words. What I'm trying to do, especially in a relatively smaller, perhaps a little more traditional city like Jaipur as compared to a Bombay or a Delhi, is even tougher. Because the mindset of parents, families, society here, and even of students is quite different. I seem very, very scandalous to a lot of parents whose kids come to me. I mean, to just put it bluntly, that's not going to change my mission, because I'm completely convinced that no matter who you are, what your financial strata is, what your background is, you should only be trying to figure out what you love and do that. What I've also tried to do, and the way I've tried to manage this, in political terms, it's called managing expectations, is that I also talk a lot to parents. Because it's not as if, unka bachcha mere paas ghar mein aa raha hai padhne ke liye aur main usse kuch patti padha raha hu, and then the parents are like, oh my god, isko kya, iske man mein kya, iske dimag mein kya bhar diya. So, for example, if there is a set of parents, and I've had scores of them, just to give you a hypothetical example, if there's a set of parents, let's say modest government servants who want their son to necessarily get into engineering, but the son wants to go into a creative field, I will have extensive meetings relentlessly with those parents, trying to work on them on a logical standpoint, from a logical standpoint, as well as from an emotional standpoint. The former being that, look, here are examples of how these so-called alternative careers, which until 5 or 10 years back did not yield a livelihood on which one could survive, is something that's completely changed now and is changing rapidly. That's on the logical side. There's a lot of work I do with parents, and on the emotional side, appealing to their own lives and their own minds, saying that ask yourselves how happy you really are. Don't you want that for your children? So there's a lot of work that goes on actually in order to get through this message with the parents also.
parents also. And does that impact the happy leaders or the happiness quotient, if I am to say, when we talk about happy leaders of the future?
Okay, so as of now, very few students stroke parents in this city, at least the ones I've been exposed to or have been exposed to me, have really sort of taken that message on. It's going to be a slow process. I don't care, because my logic is that even if 1 out of 10 of my students get it and their parents get it, it's a huge accomplishment for me. So yes, there have been examples where painfully shy and reticent kids have come out of their shell. They've discovered things about themselves that they intend to do lifelong. They've moved on to college and masters and are pursuing things that I'd like to believe they discovered during interaction between them and I. So yeah, it's happening, but it's a very small percentage. Why should I lie? Because it is still, also understand that students these days have become so busy. Their lives are so taxing. They're busier than us adults. So from them and their parents' perspective, my communication class itself is a huge luxury. They don't feel the need to take out time and effort to do that class in the first place, because the priority is कि बच्चे को उन classes में डालो जिनसे school के काम में immediate benefit or result मिले. Right. So that in itself is the first challenge. Then out of that, the few that come to me, I try and do what I've been trying to explain to you with that.
Yeah. Okay. So Karthik, coming back to your life, you've battled all these crises that I spoke about while I was introducing you. What traits, if I were to ask you to list them down, helped you come out as a warrior, as a winner, whatever you may call it, from those crises?
Wow, it's difficult. I think the very first thing, and it may sound very simplistic, Aastha, is the human spirit itself. Literally and crudely, the will to live, which is the greatest source of strength I had, and I have been having, and I continue to, for example, have huge body image issues. I've struggled with obesity. I've been made fun of. So the first sort of phase of depression that I went through, as not just because of that, because of a combination of many things. In the initial years of Hindu college in Delhi. How did I come out of it? I think at that time you just get busy with college life, and there's so many more things to explore. But like I said, the first thing is the will to live, the human spirit, which is indomitable. And the second way of coming out of any distress, mental or physical, is to accept it and ask for help. We just don't do that, especially in mental illness and in psychological trauma. There is a huge stigma that continues to be attached. You are seen as a weak individual, a very weak man, if you're seen to be vulnerable, crying, low, down, upset. Admit it and ask for help proudly and get it. And that help can come from anywhere or a combination of resources. It can be, in my case, my wife, my 3-year-old daughter, a professional counselor, a combination, friends. There's a lot of love to be had. You just have to open your arms and ask for it.
But was it easy for you to realize that, Karthik? How did that happen? Because I understand that when you are in that state of depression, when you are going through it, obviously you don't have that awareness, consciousness, yes, that you must really go ahead and do this, or this is available for me. Right. So how did it work for you?
It worked simply by, again, being surrounded another happy accident by being surrounded by people who really cared. And by that I mean friends who will tell you things you don't want to hear, but they are good for you. You know, so you know, my friends have been nagging me since college to quit smoking. My friends told me in college, buddy, go to a psychiatrist. You need it. It'll do you good. So you have to be surrounded, be lucky enough to be surrounded by the right people. You have to have a certain amount of will inside you to want to get better. And you have to go out and get that help. And yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you relate happiness to success? You know, in this race to being successful somewhere, even if it's my passion, my purpose that I'm pursuing, in that race to become successful, somewhere we put aside happiness part of it.
Yeah.
So, how do they relate, both of them?
Okay, so you know, the thing is, the definition of success or ambition is vastly different for different people. And I understand that what forms an individual's definition of these things is primarily familial atmosphere and philosophy, what that person has sort of grown up around and observing and seeing. So, you know, that's really how this definition comes about. And a person who, you know, okay, so a great example, and this is the clash that happens. It's since I teach writing, I can use that example. There's something called need and there's something called want. It's a concept that we use in economics, but it's used in literature as well. So what a character wants, what a human being wants, is oftentimes a figment of his or her own imagination. हम ये assume कर लेते हैं कि happiness के लिए हमें ये चीजें चाहिए. So for example, if you watch that film जिंदगी ना मिलेगी दोबारा, Tete-A-Tete Roshan's character is he's convinced himself that in order to be happy, he wants to earn pots of money, he wants to be very successful, he wants to be a tall business leader. But oftentimes, there is a clash or a conflict between what a human being wants and what he or she actually needs. Which, by that same example, in Hrithik Roshan's character's case, what he needs is to find love and companionship. So this conflict is true of human beings as well. What happens with most human beings is कि हमारी जो definition होती है success की या ambition की या happiness की, वो हमारी नहीं होती है. हम उसे inherit करते हैं.
The conditioning.
Conditioning is a lovely word. Brainwashing is a slightly harsher word. You know, you either got lucky if you had the right kind of conditioning, and if you had the wrong kind, then also it can be corrected by certain people who later surround you in life, or by missteps that you make and you learn from your own experience.
Got it. So Karthik, what is the message that you really want to send out or give out to, let's say, all the viewers? So there'll be students also, there'll be parents, you know, there'll be individuals who are at, you know, some stage of their life dealing with certain things, you know, depending on what age and point they are in life. What is that message that you want to give out from what you've experience in your life? So I would say nuggets from your life journey.
Right. Okay. So, you know, as far as so I feel that. So
I'll interrupt. Hold on. Yeah. Karthik, you'll have to start again because there was a connection issue. So network issue.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So Aastha, what I want to say is a couple of things.
Yeah.
Define success yourself. Whatever that may be, then nobody can tell you that's wrong or right. अगर आपने as an individual ये determine किया है बहुत गहरा सोचने के बाद, कि आपको तो पैसे से ही तृप्ति मिलेगी, that's fine. But as long as you have arrived at that definition and that conclusion and that goal and that aspiration yourself.
Okay.
So I think there's a certain process of introspection and realistic, honest introspection that people should undertake at all ages and stages of their lives. Number one. Number two message, that definition can keep changing. आपने कहीं स्टैम्प पेपर पे ये नहीं लिख दिया कि 15 साल का जब मैं था तो मैंने डिसाइड किया था कि मुझे तो यही खुशी देगा और फिर मैं बैक ट्रैक नहीं कर सकता. सोसाइटी की आदत है कि हमें शू ऑन करें. For example, I write extensively on education across various newspapers. Now, if I want to give 80% of these newspapers an article on art or music, they'll say, नहीं, हम ये आपसे कैसे ले लें? आप तो केवल education पे लिखिए. Right?
Yeah.
So it can change. We are multifaceted people. Allow yourself that luxury and that liberty and that right.
Yeah.
Find your own ambition, revisit it and review it, and follow it with dogged stubbornness and persistence.
Wow. So I think very, very powerful. And when you were talking about the first point, when you were talking about defining success your own way, introspection, I was, in my mind, I was just wondering, what if it changes? And here you came with the same thing, that just allow yourself that liberty to let it change, so beautiful.
Quickly, yeah. Aastha, I'll share with you, with a lot of my students, one very standard writing thing that I make them do is I make them write a profile, whether it's a 8-year-old child or a 20-year-old child. उसमें उन्हें अपने passions के बारे में लिखना पड़ता है.
Okay.
And then I make them rewrite it or revisit it every 6 months to a year.
Okay.
So automatically, this thing is somewhere coming into that child that there's a certain amount of self-awareness and the freedom of changing one's mind. We are all maturing, evolving, developing as people. We are bound to change. It's fine.
Lovely. So, Karthik, where do you connect with these students? Are you associated with schools, or do you run some classes where parents can connect with you? How does it work?
Okay, so how it works is that I have very consciously chosen not to permanently associate with a particular institute or organization. There's a very selfish reason for that, because I love the opportunity of interacting with a wide, diverse set of students, be it age, what they are pursuing, stage, etc., etc. So I love the fact that one day I can go into my friend's NGO and interact with, kids there. The next day I can do my own alma mater and talk to children at a boarding school. The third day I can go into a design college and talk to kids there. So I'm not associated with anybody. I'm in that sense a freelance communications educator.
Okay.
I do classes at my own home, but the way I've tried to divide it, Aastha, very quickly is that at my home I do one-on-one lessons.
Okay.
Okay, and I do workshops, but those workshops are generally then the regular ones are through two places. One is called the Open Space Society, or TOS, and one is called Hello English, which is an online platform. So I do regular workshops with these two sort of organizations. I teach one-on-one alone at my home, and otherwise I'm called thankfully all over the country to various schools, etc., to sporadic lectures or standalone workshops. So you can find me across social media, on the net, my own website, etc.
Great. So I think that's a huge opportunity. So all those of you who are watching, and if you really want to connect, you've heard it from the man himself. So just go ahead, connect with him, and that would be great. So I think, Karthik, this was amazing. And I think just to quickly summarize, and you may add on if I miss out on something, you spoke about certain very, very critical aspects where you said the human spirit. I think that was an eye opener for me. The human spirit, the will to live, to fight was there, and that helped you come out of it. And I think that is inherent. Somewhere it's there inside. When we kind of lose it, we're not aware, but I think it's there. So
I just want to,
Yeah.
since you said,
Yeah.
So Aastha, speaking of the human spirit, in October of 2019, I was diagnosed with my thyroid cancer. And the first image or visual that came into my head was that of my daughters. Because, in any case, I think by Indian standards, Anuja and I have had our daughter quite late. I'm going to be 40 in a month's time. She's only 3 years old, our daughter, Krisha. So that time she was even younger. So the first, biggest, greatest fear I had was, oh God, what if something happens to me? What happens to my daughter? But then,
Yeah.
it works in such a strange way that it's almost like the poison becomes the antidote, because then it was that same visual and same thought of my daughters that actually gave me the strength to fight this thing,
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. Great. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. And then I think, Karthik, very important thing that you spoke about, which I see missing so many times, is the whole thing around accepting whatever it is. So acceptance and being open to seeking help. That's still a taboo, like you mentioned. So I think one needs to be open to go all out, seek help.
And again, sorry at the cost of interrupting you, acceptance for everything, Aastha. It's very, very important. Acceptance for a young person's choices in all aspects of life, including sexual orientation, gender, academic leanings, cultural leanings, any acceptance in its truest, most holistic form.
Very well said. Yeah, true. Yeah. And then, yes, you also spoke about having people around you who are honest, very, very straight with you in terms of letting you know. A lot of times we run away from such people, and that's the tendency. So I think that's a very important message, not just for youngsters, but even adults, and I think everybody. So
I'll give you a solution for the people who run away, whether it's the person running away or the friends running away. Marry the person.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting.
In my case, that's what it is. I have the reason for my resurrection, especially post my cancer and depression, second bout of depression, is my wife. And that's because she's a straight shooter. And she tells me the most uncomfortable, annoying truths. And yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, so she tells you the most annoying things. That's where we lost you. Did you say anything after that?
She tells me the most inconvenient, uncomfortable, and annoying truths.
Oh, yes. Okay. Lovely. So I think that's a great message. Great. So I think, great. Thank you for all those sharings, all those experiences and the nuggets that you gave. And I'm sure each one of us really picked on from these. Lot of important things. I think certain things we knew about, but when it comes to taking actions, I think that's where it's all missing. And there were a lot of eye openers also. So thank you so much, Karthik, for sharing. And I would really, really urge everybody to not just hear it out. I'm sure you would have written it down, but also to implement, like really go all out. And you can connect with Karthik anytime that you want. He's there on social media everywhere. So please just go ahead and do that. So thank you so much, Karthik, for joining in, and thank you for your time. It was such a pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't thank you enough for letting me speak my mind. Oftentimes I say things that irritate parents and people, but I'm firm on my convictions, and thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for doing what you're doing, Karthik. You just mentioned that, it's a very small proportion of students, parents who are really aware today and really doing it. But I think what you've initiated, and you then said, I don't care, that doesn't change my mission. So which is phenomenal, because I think boond boond se ghada bharta hai. So I think if that's the attitude each one of us adopts, that's where we can look at a change.
Also, what will happen is that if one out of these 10 students grows up to become a happy person, then people around him or her will, it takes one to ruin the cohort.
Yeah.
And one to make it.
Very well said. Great. That's a great note that we're ending on. So thank you so much, and bye-bye.
My pleasure.